So, as you can see, this mandolin's looking a lot different than the last video. I've stained it probably 4 more sessions of kind of building the grain contrast, sanding back, repeating that. And now I'm basically applying the base layer of shellac, and I'll be starting to French polish soon. So, as I've said before, I just kind of do some overlapping passes with the shellac and then kind of wait for it to gas off. Normally I'd have this light on, but I turned it off. Kind of always work systematically. Again, sides, neck, front and back of the headstock, top and back. When I am doing the actual French polishing, I will actually stay more hyper-focused on, let's say I'll just do the top and then maybe one of the sides, and then I'll let those 2 sides cure for, like an hour or so. Because I don't want to be like flipping it around, putting pressure on something that just French polished, and then the shellac is still soft, it's curing, so you could just leave an imprint or something. And for this build, we're not going for a pattern of towel imprint on the side. So if I were, then I would definitely press it into the padding. So not this build. So as you can see, some of the passes I'm doing overlap, some of them don't. It's okay. Just trying to get material down. I've tried spraying shellac. It can work, but it can also be a little finicky as far as temperature and viscosity. Like most things you're spraying, I find it's just as easy to just kind of do it this method, and then you can have a podcast or an audiobook on and think about other life things that are going on. So again, this is just kind of laying down material that I'll then go over and do the French polishing technique over. And again, that's going to be basically dissolving and kind of melting these base layers all together. So I'll put a little more on here. It goes pretty quick once you do a few passes, because then you're just building shellac on top of shellac as opposed to the initial shellac on the wood. So already by the time I get over to this side of the mandolin, I can feel it kind of getting a little gummy and a little sticky or tacky as I'm getting to this side. So be careful, because you don't want to just be dragging through like a tacky, sticky shellac. A lot of times I'll leave behind a very like undesirable kind of gunked up shellac that you then need to go back and level or scuff sand with like 320. I would use like 320 grit wet dry sandpaper if that were the case, and just very lightly do that spot. You do need to be careful if you do have to go scuff sand, because remember, this is a stained instrument with certain color, so if you scuff sand too much and go through the base coat of shellac, you're gonna remove the stain, and then you'll have a very weird looking blotch of the wood and the stained wood next to it. So if that were to happen, you could kind of do a spot spray of that color and kind of bleed them together, but for my brain, it would just aggravate me too much, or I would just fixate on that too much, where I would do better of just sanding it all back and restaining it so it's all totally uniform from that same session. So I don't know. Do as you wish and what you have patience for. maybe I'd be more productive if I used the shortcut method. But sometimes shortcuts take longer, you know, because sometimes shortcuts can just open a whole other can of worms, and usually in that unforeseen can of worms are a lot of aggravating scenarios. So I don't know. All right, so I think that's good for building this initial base coat. What I'm gonna do next, I'm gonna let this gas off, maybe for like half hour, 60 minutes, and then I'm gonna start the French polishing, and I'll show how I do that at that point in time.